You might recall that we have been blowing up random boats in international waters for a little while now, getting silly with it, having fun, as part of a broad and highly effective strategy to combat drug trafficking, vaporizing random unidentified boats like 3,000 miles away from the United States shorelines. Anyway, it turned out, it was revealed a couple of days ago that in addition to something we already knew, which was that we've been doing these double tap strikes, unambiguously a war crime, where you blow up the boat, and then if there are survivors in the water, you fire at them again. That's a war crime. You can't do that. There are actually a lot of rules in war, believe it or not. You're not supposed to kill people when they pose no threat to you, broadly speaking. It's textbook war crime. The double tap strike on people surviving a ship strike. Anyway, Pete Hegseth was revealed to have been the person who ordered that strike. The Secretary of Defense, or Secretary of War, as he prefers, directly ordered it. He's been bragging about it. Here's him on Twitter. This is our Secretary of Defense. It was found out that he had directly ordered it. Of course, immediately after this information was revealed, the administration took credit. Obviously, they don't give a fuck if they're committing war crimes. There are no consequences for it anyway. But weirdly, and I'm genuinely interested in understanding why it is they're backtracking on this, they are now pinning the blame on somebody else.
Jackie. Thank you, Caroline. Following up on Gabe's question, you said that the follow-up strike was lawful. What law is it that allows no survivors?
The strike conducted on September 2nd was conducted in self-defense to protect Americans in vital United States interests. The strike was conducted in international waters and in accordance with the law of armed conflict.
And then on this pardon for the Honduran president, does it at all undercut the administration's...
I thought they were prideful of Hegseth doing that. What the... No. They were at first. At first they were. They don't care if they're doing war crimes. It's not like they give a shit. But weirdly, there was this very quick shuffle where at first it was like cool that they did it. And now for some reason, they're shifting blame away.
Messaging, while you have these congressional Republicans defending the strikes on the narco-terrorists and then a pardon for a convicted drug trafficker, does that make it more difficult for your members to defend your administration's policy?
I don't think so, Jackie. I think that President Trump has been quite clear in his defense of the United States homeland to stop these illegal narcotics from coming to our borders, whether that's by land or by sea. And he's also made it quite clear that he wants to correct the wrongs of the weaponized Justice Department under the previous administration.
Like Donald Trump said he didn't order the strikes, which, yeah, it would make sense the president isn't directly ordering a follow-up strike on a fishing boat.
He said, I don't know anything about it. He said he did not say that, and I believe him 100%.
You don't know if there was
You're talking about the two men?
The second strike to kill the two men.
No, he said he didn't do it. He said he never said
Would
that.
you be okay with that if he did?
He said he didn't do it, so I don't have to make that decision.
He said he didn't do it. I didn't do it.
President Trump and Secretary Hegseth have made it clear that presidentially designated narco-terrorist groups are subject to lethal targeting in accordance with the laws of war. With respect to the strikes in question on September 2nd, Secretary Hegseth authorized Admiral Bradley to conduct these kinetic strikes.
You said that the follow-up
And who
strike
did it? They're pinning it on an admiral.
Was lawful. What law is it that allows no survivors?
We heard this.
In accordance with the law and the threat of narco-terrorism. A seat. She's a very popular face on television these days. She's built a great independent media podcast and platform with the Daily Wire, and I appreciate your being here, Isabel.
Thank you, Caroline. Appreciate it and appreciate the briefing. Many Americans, in light of these recent events that you just mentioned, are starting to say...
Won't this spook every military commander? This is the thing that I'm curious about, okay? So far, the administration has proven themselves to be essentially immune to prosecution, right? They get away with a lot, The courts are not stopping them. What does this do other than make the Pentagon mad? No admiral wants to have this pinned on them. We know for a fact Pete Hegseth ordered the follow-up strike. These strikes are so illegal that the admiral who led was Southcom, the admiral in charge of all operations in Latin America, resigned over it. Like, basically, he was like, I don't want this on my plate. I'm not going to hell. Goodbye. Yeah, Southcom Admiral resigned over this. So nobody in the Pentagon wants to be known as the guy who did war crimes, okay? I understand that might come across like a naive sentiment. Oh, don't you know they do war crimes? Yeah, but they don't want to be known for it. That's not, yes, but it's not, we're not in Iraq or Afghanistan anymore, okay? We're not in an active conflict where we're getting opportunities or we're navigating difficult situations. They're just doing war crimes for the funsies. They don't want that shit. They're not getting it for anything. All this does is make the Pentagon mad at them. So what does this mean then? Anytime the administration directly orders something illegal to be done, they'll just immediately shift the blame to a ranking officer in the Pentagon? That's insane. That's psychotic.
That we are being invaded as a country, culturally and logistically, when it comes to immigration. And we know that immigration without assimilation is indeed invasion. So given the recent remarks from Vice President Vance on a college campus about dramatically reducing legal immigration to address some of this crisis, and President Trump's Truth Social post last week about individuals who may be non-compatible with Western civilization, are there any conversations happening or plans being made behind the scenes for the administration to implement at least a temporary immigration moratorium, for example, in light of what the American people might be?
Yeah, we'll get to that later.
Now, Congressman, you mentioned earlier in the interview that many Republicans are outraged about these strikes, outraged about this follow-on strike. What can you tell us behind the scenes that's happening right now? This bipartisan push, it seems like it's growing with every single day, but with this White House admission, I could only imagine the outrage that they're going to face now.
Well, we are about to announce an unprecedented bipartisan House Armed Services investigation into this illegal strike. That has to be authorized by Mike Rogers, the Republican chairman of the Armed Services Committee. And all indications are that he's going to do that. Now, I'm a leader and the ranking member of the subcommittee for AI and emerging technology. And my counterpart, Don Bacon, who's the chair of that subcommittee, has also expressed deep concerns. But you have a bipartisan leadership of the Armed Services Committee that is going to hold Pete Hegseth and the Admiral in front of the Congress. And they're going to have to explain to the American people.
Oh my God, can we please get them to testify next to each other? I have a feeling the Admiral would probably sell out Pete. You know, just go out with a bang. Oh my God, just standing next to each other. Well, sitting. I suppose they'd be sitting next to each other. Jesus Christ. My only theory on this, my only theory as to why this is playing out is, for one, let's be clear. Trump is not in the know on anything. Trump is told things and he tweets. When a microphone is shoved in his face, he says whatever. He is not being consulted here, okay? My guess is that he or someone else in the administration has a general directive right now, which is stir shit up and be based. Be red-pilled. Be fash-pilled, you know? Be your own little dark age edit. And Pete Hegseth was like, sir, yes, sir. Okay, we're going to just randomly kill fishermen or whatever. We're just going to bomb boats. I don't care. You know, war crimes, yeah, based. And then at some point, after Pete Hegseth directly ordered those follow-up strikes, and the information perhaps was leaked or on its way to being leaked, somebody told Hegseth, hey, my guy, you could get in like real trouble for this, and Trump is not going to be around forever. Like, you are young, he is old. People have been held accountable for war crimes decades after committing those war crimes. You might have actually f***ed yourself a little bit here. We have no idea what the world's going to look like in 10 years, but there are not a lot of countries that would look kindly upon what you've just done. This is just a generally bad move PR-wise. And that is when he immediately shifted the blame to the Admiral. Does that sound realistic to you people? To me, that's the best explanation I have for this little shuffle.
What they did, and they're going to face a grilling by both Republicans and Democrats on the committee. Guess what? Suddenly the Congress has woken up. Maybe I think it was after the Epstein vote, because 427 people voted for my bill. And,
over 10 NATO allies have already cut intel to the U.S. for the region because of this shit. Yeah, nobody wants to be implicated in obvious, pointless war crimes. It's not even, again, nothing is being accomplished here. It's not even being done for any like laudable outcome. They're not benefiting from this in any way.
What? They're still in Congress and they don't have primary challenges. And in some cases, they're more popular in their districts. And so they've found out that you can stand up to the president, that your job when you're in Congress is to be a check and balance. And now we're going to see in the Armed Services Committee, finally, Congress asserting itself and standing up to a Secretary of War who is lawless and betraying American ideals, who's killing people on our behalf without our values or our constitutional.
It's actually ramping up quite a bit. Like I said, the MAGA movement is dead. They've lost the momentum they had from the election, and they're not getting it back. Especially with the Epstein vote, man. God, unanimous consent in the Senate? I think they're going to find, even the Republicans are going to find more and more excuses to pick after the administration now because they want to outlast it.
President Trump is convening a White House meeting of his top national security officials to discuss the next steps regarding Venezuela. Now, perhaps you're sitting out there wondering, why do there need to be next steps with regard to Venezuela?
Also, Vosh, while the Pentagon may like doing war crimes to them, it's an institution. This is going after and blaming a specific person. Yeah, it's also worth noting, again, that, like, the Pentagon is, hopefully we've covered the groundwork on this one, so you all won't disagree with me, by and large a bad organization, staffed by bad people. But they're also, for the most part, loyal, administrative, bureaucratic, and they dot their I's and cross their T's. Usually, when war crimes are committed, it's either a hasty decision made in like a heated situation, or the consequence of increasing political pressure over time to achieve a certain outcome, you know? In anything from the shit we were up My Lai massacre to like Abu Ghraib or whatever, you have this like scale of how quickly was the crime committed and how many people were involved and how much the people involved wanted to do it, you know? It's evil across the spectrum. There's no defending it. But what's important to understand is that for these people, there were at the very least stakes. Something was on the table. None of them want to go down as the guy who did the crimes over nothing. We're literally just bombing fishing boats right now in international waters. There's no point. It's an insane thing. You know, it's like sometimes people are willing to die on a hill to defend a bad position. But if it's something they believe in, they're willing to like plant their feet in the ground. This would be like dying on a hill over a position you find odious and don't believe in. It's not that you're not willing to die on hills. You're fine with the concept of dying on the right hills. This is just not your hill.
So you are not alone. Why we're even discussing military action against the nation of Venezuela is a topic that the president has yet to explain in any full or satisfying way. Still, the meeting comes as the administration is intensifying its pressure campaign on the country because of narcotics trafficking that comes from that country. The U.S., since
thanks CNN for sane-washing the administration again.
September 2nd, has fired upon and sunk 22 boats of alleged narco traffickers, killing more than 80 people. The U.S. military has amassed an armada in the region, more than a dozen warships and 15,000 troops, as part of what the Pentagon has branded Operation Southern Spear. And President Trump is teasing looming warfare, warning that the country's airspace, Venezuela's airspace, should be considered closed, and saying that the U.S. would be stopping Venezuelan drug trafficking by land, in addition to by sea, quote, very soon. Now, this White House Venezuela meeting also comes as the administration is for the first time acknowledging a September follow-up strike on an alleged drug boat known as a double tap.
Has there ever been a leader this blatantly deranged? In America? No. No. This administration is the most outright insane and corrupt administration in American history, easily. In world history? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Andrew Jackson. Dude, Andrew Jackson is like the picture of sanity and moderation compared to this administration. No, there's no comparison.
Pentagon is facing growing questions about the legality of that move and the campaign in general. Now, the concession comes following reporting from CNN's Natasha Burke, as well as others at the Washington Post and The Intercept, that the U.S. carried out this double tap after the initial attack, which a source told CNN that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said needed to kill everyone on board. And we're told that that first strike did not kill everyone on board. So the second strike killed those survivors, even though, according to...
The funny thing is, this isn't even a policy that they kept consistent for all their boat strikes. For example, at least one of the strikes they conducted, after the initial strike was conducted, survivors were captured and then repatriated to their home country. Like, they weren't even arrested. Like, we struck a narco-terrorist boat in international waters, and the survivors were scooped up by the Navy or Coast Guard, one or the other, and then rather than being arrested for crimes apparently so severe we were willing to bomb their boat in international waters over them, they just got repatriated. Yeah, you would not want these people subject to a trial. If anything, I suspect that once they realized the double tap strikes were a bad idea, they really, really, really don't want these people to get accessed by American media, because that would make the administration look really bad. right? So they don't want a trial. They want to just shove him back in Venezuela, where it's really tough to get him.
Washington Post, they were, quote, clinging to the smoldering wreck, unquote, and posed no apparent threat to the United States. It's a move, the double tap that President Trump said yesterday he opposed.
I wouldn't have wanted that, not a second strike.
Now, today, there is growing bipartisan concern on Capitol Hill about that second strike, with some suggesting that it could constitute a war crime. This is what White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said about that earlier today.
Does the administration deny that that second strike happened, or did it happen and the administration denies that Secretary Hegseth gave the order?
The latter is true, Abe.
To clarify, Admiral Bradley was the one who gave that order for a second strike.
And he was well within his authority to do so.
Now, please note, the Trump administration went from the Pentagon spokesman claiming, quote, the entire narrative is false. These people just fabricate anonymously sourced stories out of whole cloth. Fake news is the enemy of the people. He said that 2 days ago. To today, the White House confirmed the story. The Hegseth
many such cases.
Order, the September 2nd strike, the double tap, remarkable. The White House's acknowledgement of the double tap comes after Secretary Hegseth went on X and said that the stories
It's also shameless, man. It used to be that if you knew bad information was about to come out, you would keep quiet about it, not openly deny it, because people would think less of you if you denied it and then were immediately proven to be a liar. But now it doesn't matter, because they're all openly lying all the time to their own followers, and they're never ever held to account for it, so why even bother?
Quote, fabricated, inflammatory, and derogatory, though neither he nor anyone at the Pentagon ever specified what, if anything, was inaccurate. Hegseth also, believe it or not, posted this meme of a fake depiction of a children's book showing gunboats targeting narco traffickers, featuring the turtle Franklin dressed as a member of the military. Yes, this is an actual post from an actual Secretary of Defense sharing a meme, presumably to own the libs, though the administration will not share the classified legal justification behind any of these lethal strikes being carried out in your name. We should note the interesting timing of all this. Several top flag officers prematurely left their posts. In October, after these strikes in the Caribbean began, Southcom Commander Admiral Alvin Halsey, who is in charge of the operations in the Caribbean.
Insane face, by the way. Like hit randomize on the character customizer for a Bethesda game face. Jesus Christ, look at that jawline. It like curves out.
Announced he's retiring from his post only 1 year into his tenure. CNN reported at the time that, quote, Southcom was concerned about these Caribbean operations not being lawful, per sources. In addition, three-star General Joe McGee, Director for Strategy, Plans, and Policy on the Joint Staff, also departed early, in part amid concerns he had with the Caribbean strikes, according to CNN reporting at the time. Now, we're told that the Senate and House Armed Services Committees are very concerned, and they're going to conduct oversight over this operation. It does remain to be seen just how seriously the Republican-led Congress will take any of this. CNN's Elena Treen is at the White House. Elena, what do we know?
I really hope we get Hegseth to testify to Congress, because that motherfucker is going to either immediately perjure himself or plead the fifth on everything. He does seem to me like one of the easier sacrificial pawns of the administration, don't you think? He's obviously not that bright, and he's also really easy to dislike. I feel like the Republican Party might be relatively quick to turn on him. Again, a lot of career politicians kind of resent the fact that Trump elevated a bunch of sycophantic nobodies just because he saw them on Fox News all the time.
About this national security meeting about Venezuela coming after confirmation of the double tap boat strike.
Well, it'll be interesting because one of the people expected to be in that room, Jake, is the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth himself. Now, when our colleague Natasha Bertrand and I reported on this meeting this morning, we were given few details, but we were told that it was going to be regarding next steps on Venezuela. Also expected to attend is the Joint Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane, as well as Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Stephen Miller, who has been actually very heavily involved in these discussions as it relates to Venezuela. He's expected to be in attendance.
Wow, that's interesting. I wonder why the Chief of Staff is so closely involved in the specific operations and deployment of both domestic and foreign military. That's so interesting.
as well as the White House Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles. So that gives you some sense of that. This is likely going to be talking about what comes next here. And I'd remind you what we heard the president himself say just days ago, which is that you can expect possible more strikes, but also potential land strikes, quote, very soon. And so all of that on the heels of what you just laid out regarding this double tap, I think is going to be really central to this discussion, especially as they're getting so much heat.
Would you expect a background no-name general to have done it? Admiral, you mean? God, no. No. Nobody wants these strikes in international waters except for the administration. Everything is being done directly by Pete Hegseth. If Pete Hegseth gave a general order saying to just strike any boats you see, they would not do a follow-up strike. No pen-pushing West Point graduate bureaucrat in the Pentagon would ever risk their career and life on a meaningless double tap strike for like nothing. For a man they don't respect. It's not like the Pentagon likes Hegseth. They're not doing it out of loyalty, you know?
From both sides of the aisle at the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue, with lawmakers raising concerns about whether this was actually lawful and legal. Because one of the things I've been picking up in some of my conversations, Jake, with Republicans is the idea that the United States is not at war with Venezuela. We heard Leavitt lay out today that citing that they were able to do this double tax strike because of the law of armed conflict. And so all of that, I think, going to be crucial to this meeting and where they go next in relation to their future plans for Venezuela.
All right. Elena Trine at the White House, thanks so much. With us now is Democratic Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona. He's on the Senate Intelligence Committee and the Senate Armed Services Committee. He's also a retired U.S. Navy combat pilot. So first of all, they confirmed the double tap strike today, the White House, even though 2 days ago, Sean Parnell at the Pentagon was saying the entire story was fabricated, made up out of whole
Wonder if this had something to do with this, Lowell. 100%. Outlets that reach millions denied access to rare Pentagon news briefings this week. Very partisan title, AP News. Well done. What a rarity. Thank you for framing this with some degree of contempt. Sessions are being held instead for Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's hand-picked media organizations. It's not as if there's little to talk about. Yeah, they're doing damage control. They're doing damage control. That's all. They're essentially, Pete Hegseth is rounding up the few news media orgs that agreed to sign the pact that said they would only release information that Pete Hegseth personally authorized them to, and saying, here's how we're getting ahead of this, here's how we're going to defend me. That's all there is to it, really. It's also transparent.
So I want to fast forward to today, and I want to do that by showing you what Pete Hegseth said the morning after the strike on his former place of employment, the Fox and Friends morning program on Fox News.
That was definitely not artificial intelligence. I watched it live. We knew exactly who was in that boat. We knew exactly what they were doing, and we knew exactly who they represented. And that was Tren de Aragua, a narco-terrorist organization designated by the United States, trying to poison our country with illicit drugs.
So Pete Hegseth confirming a central piece of the Washington Post reporting, quote, I watched it live. We knew who they were. We knew what they represented, says who they are, designated by the United States. So we've established him in the room. Post has reported it. 11 people were on the...
How surprised do you think Hegseth was when he found out what he did was illegal? I doubt he cared that it was illegal. He probably did care when people pointed out that it was like the kind of illegal that sticks with you. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if he genuinely had no clue.
Call two people with direct knowledge speak to the Post. Pete Hegseth on live TV corroborates it. So I found this amazing. This is the White House spokeswoman at her briefing today.
To be clear, does the administration deny that that second strike happened, or did it happen and the administration denies that Secretary Hegseth gave the order?
The latter is true, Abe, and I have a statement to read for you here. President Trump and Secretary Hegseth have made it clear that presidentially designated narco-terrorist groups are subject to lethal targeting in accordance with the laws of war. With respect to the strikes in question on September 2nd, Secretary Hegseth authorized Admiral Bradley to conduct these kinetic strikes.
To clarify, Admiral Bradley was the one who gave that order for a second strike.
And he was well within his authority to do so.
Did Admiral Bradley order that second strike because there were still survivors after the initial strike?
Again, as I read for you, Admiral Bradley worked well within his authority and the law. He directed the engagement to ensure the boat was destroyed and the threat of narco-terrorists to the United States was completely eliminated.
General Hertling, do you know?
There's no way. Isn't this the guy that runs the Navy SEALs? This is like a careerist. There's no way. Yeah?
Admiral Bradley?
I do not, Claire, but I do know
he's the head of the Navy SEALs. Why would you pick him to take the fall? That's absolutely insane. There's no way. True, did they draw sticks? He had to be directly told to do the follow-up strike. He would never do that of his own volition. This is Death of Stalin type shit going on beyond the curtains. Oh my God, you know it is. They're going insane back there. Jesus Christ. The Post Bradley ordered a second strike after 2 survivors were identified in drone feed, following Hegseth's directive to leave no survivors, which again is not something you can say. You can't say leave no survivors. That's like a movie thing. That's like a movie villain thing. You can't actually do that. You can the initial strike is still illegal, but the follow-up strike is double illegal. You can't actually do that. Bro thinks he's Lex Luthor. I'm sure that the brass at the Pentagon really appreciate receiving orders from people who have no idea what they're doing or talking about, what is or isn't illegal. Just repeating shit they see off movies. There's going to be heavy fallout for all this shit years from now even. Yeah, I mean, we're demonstrating an open contempt for international rule of law that we haven't seen since the invasion of Vietnam. Arguably, I would say that exceeds the invasion of Vietnam. Like, obviously, the invasion of Vietnam was a much greater commitment of military resources, many war crimes committed, etc. But I would argue that at the time, our leadership was more interested in maintaining the facade of good governance and morality. Whereas nowadays, like, there's a reason JFK didn't want to directly sign on to the Bay of Pigs. If the Bay of Pigs happened today, Trump would be tweeting about it live as it happened, and when they were all gunned down by Cuban military personnel, he would call the repatriated Cubans who were part of the operation weak and losers who couldn't hit a shot if their life depended on it, which it did, and that's why they're dead. You know, it was so much open contempt for the rule of law. I feel like we've been in an endless cycle of that's illegal since January. Nothing happens. What's different this time? Well, nothing's really different this time. Like, it's just another example of them breaking the law. I guess the main thing that makes it different or funny is that the sharks are starting to smell chum in the water. Now that the MAGA movement is dead, especially after the most recent elections, the Republicans are going to be looking for edge cases to turn on their own so their political careers can survive the inevitable collapse of the MAGA movement. Trump and everyone in this administration is going to fall hard, you know? How long it takes, I couldn't tell you. Maybe it takes years. I don't know. And whether or not the Democrats are able to do anything with that, also have no idea. But this administration's time is done. They are on the clock. There's no getting around it. So the more they do stuff like this in a desperate and vain effort to stay relevant and farm interest, the more opportunities they create for other people to turn on them. There are congressional Republicans who are upset about this, you know. A decent amount. How can the MAGA movement inevitably collapse when 40% of the country is solidly behind him? Not 40. More like 32, 33. But also, that's approval of Trump, not of the MAGA movement in general. Individual approval for all of the members of Trump's cabinet wavers and is often, or almost always, lower than Trump's itself. And again, 33% support is extremely low on its own, the support for Trump. It only goes lower from there. You know, we're talking about people who get in their 20s. No Democrat likes Kash Patel, and a lot of Republicans don't either. It's not great. So if a better alternative is found within their movement, they will find it. And if not, they will collapse. Obviously, it would be a lot easier if the Democrats weren't super incompetent, but, you know, that's a lot of medals. You realize if they get this guy to testify, there's a very real possibility of him saying he was aware that his orders were illegal, but he conducted them anyway, right? I give it a 30% chance. Like, it is very possible that he was given illegal orders, he followed them because he was pressured to, which he shouldn't have, that's still a crime. And then in front of Congress, he, you know, hands folded, he's like, yes, I did it anyway. And he just, because it puts them in a vice, basically. If he admits he did anything illegal at the behest of the administration can't really hold him accountable for it without admitting that Hegseth ordered him to do something illegal, which would implicate Hegseth. I could see some people being prosecuted for this, potentially, though it might be a while. If he openly turns on the administration, if subpoena, that might be something, but Who knows? This would also explain why the regime freaked out so loudly about a mealy-mouthed video about not following illegal orders. Yeah, for sure. It definitely doesn't make them look very good in future testimony that at the time these strikes were being conducted, the administration was calling it treasonous to say soldiers should not follow illegal orders. That does not bolster their position very much, you know?
His position in the military right now, I don't know him personally, but it kind of appears like he just got thrown under the bus. And this kind of information is critical. I did not hear that press conference today, but it's critical because if there is, and there should be, an inquiry by the United States Congress, this is going to turn into a very interesting inquiry, not only from what the Secretary of Defense says, but what from the SEAL team leader says, the individuals who reportedly gave the information to the Washington Post, the lawyers, the Southcom commander, and anybody else that was involved. And if it was an open line and there were no written orders, but it was a verbal order by anyone, it will more than likely be recorded just like the strike was recorded. And by the way, this probably, in my view, I don't know this for certain, but I'm going to use a little conjecture here. If they were firing something from an island in the Caribbean, this was not a drone strike. This was more than likely some type of artillery piece or a rocket. It was laser guided. That's what it appeared to look like from the strike to me. If it's laser guided, you have to keep the pilot with the laser on the target until the round hits.
Why the f were they recording those strikes? So they could brag about it on Twitter?
There are going to be films of exactly what happened. So as Carolyn Leavitt tries to explain in a non-military way exactly what happened, it appears like she's only digging a deeper hole.
Yeah, I mean, Admiral Baumgartner.
Bagheera? Oh.
Caroline Leavitt is saying.
Both of the cats are now in the PC tower. I haven't seen that before. Ooh, what are you both doing? What are you both up to?
Admiral Bradley worked well within his authority in the law. His authority in the law is inconsistent with striking survivors from an initial strike. And again, I just want to tell everyone what the Post has reported happened. A missile screamed off the Trinidad coast, striking the vessel and igniting a blaze from bow to stern. For minutes, commanders watched the boat burning on a live drone feed, which was recorded. We can go back and look at that if there's a real investigation. I know that's an if. As the smoke cleared, they got a jolt. 2 survivors were clinging to the smoldering wreck. That appears inconsistent with what Caroline Leavitt said today. Quote, as I read for you, Admiral Bradley worked well within his authority in the law. It would seem that if the system is still working, that someone would have sought guidance or would have wanted to know what to do. The White House throwing Admiral Bradley under the bus seems totally inconsistent with Pete Hegseth's appearance on Fox News the morning after the operation, which, again, I'll quote that for you.
Please.
Quote, I watched it live. We knew who was in the boat and what they represented. That is Tren de Aragua, designated by the United States for trying to poison our country with illicit drugs.
Well, I would say here several things are consistent, and the consistency being that it isn't consistent with reality. So when you start here, first of all, there were supposedly 11 people on this vessel. No one that's experienced in this area would think that this is a major shipment of cocaine to the United States with 11.
I hate this rationalization so much. Even if it was a massive narco boat filled with cocaine and terrorists, you still couldn't strike it. That's still against the law. You can't just kill people. Even if it was the cocaine boat and it was on its way to America, destination America, you know, it would be legal. The Coast Guard being parked in American waters, and the moment it enters American waters, it gets boarded. That's what the legal thing to do would be. That's what you could do. You can't just kill them.
11 people on the vessel, entirely inconsistent. Second, the drug that's
because they leave all that room for drugs, right? If they're running drugs, they're never more than 2 people. Explain that.
Yes, yeah. If you're running drugs,
this shit pisses me off so much, man. This rationalization, because that's what they're doing. The implicit argument that they're making is it's only bad because they might have not been the drug runners that they say they are. Ugh. Whatever the case may be, the floundering over this is pretty good. We'll see how much interest gets drummed up in Congress over subpoenaing Hegseth and Bradley, because if they are asked to testify, that could be pretty interesting. Hegseth now personally throwing Bradley under the bus? Let's make one thing clear. Admiral Mitch Bradley's an American hero, a true professional, and he has 100% support. I stand by him and the combat decisions he has made. Oh my God. That's so funny, dude. Such a coward. Dude, they're calling him the Pentagon's favorite guy. He's doing so much to endear himself to the brass. Jesus Christ. That is insane. Look, I hope they get subpoenaed. Please, God, let them get subpoenaed. Remember when James Somerton said, I know Nick would never plagiarize? Yes! It's just like that. Listen, I know we haven't plagiarized on my channel because my boy Nick vets everything. And so if you're accusing us of plagiarizing, then you're saying Nick did it, which he would never do. And frankly, I won't tolerate it, you know? Yeah, that was good, man. H-Bomber guy, that sure was a good channel. How many more years until we get the next one? 2 or 3? Okay.